brave to be by your side.
صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في القرآن الكريم ربي لا تذر على الأرض من الكافرين ديارا إنك إن تذرهم يضلوا عبادك ولا يلدوا إلا فاجرا كفارا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. My respected brothers, scholars, brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How is it that he went from Hussain ibn Ali to Sayyid al-Shuhada? How is it that he went from Hussain ibn Ali to Abu al-Ahrar? Indeed, if you were to see somebody who goes from being Ahmed to Professor Ahmed, you have to ask the question, what classes did he take? What courses did he take? Which university did he attend? What did he do to become the professor that he is? What did he do to receive those two letters, DR, before his name? Likewise, this same question needs to be posed when it comes to Imam al-Hussain. And this is indeed one of the 6 principles that we presented in the beginning of the series, which is, we want to know how Hussain became Hussain. We want to know what was the Hussaini evolution. Therefore, we need to see what happened between the birth and between the martyrdom, to see not only Hussain the product, but to study Hussain the process. Today, there are a number of elements which we want to take a look at, specifically in regards to the upbringing. First night was intro, second night birth, tonight is the upbringing. How is it that Imam Hussain alayhi salam, his upbringing contributed to who he was on the 10th? There are about 3 elements which we need to look at to understand the following. The first principle and the first element which contributed to Hussain going from the man Hussain ibn Ali to Sayyid al-Shuhada to Abu al-Ahrar is inheritance. Inheritance today, as psychologists tell us, is defined as an expression from the root. So a son who is generous must have had a father who had roots which were generous. And a father who was mischievous is bound to send these characteristics to his son. Now, of course, there are exceptions, which I don't want to go into, such as the son of Nuh, who was one of the worst, who had a father who was one of the 5 greatest prophets. Therefore, there are exceptions. Yeah, to speak on a general level, and even on a psychological level, the son inherits roots, inherits characteristics from the father. Psychologically, it's defined as an expression of the root. Now we know when the ovum meets the spermatozoon, the human being tends to come into existence. When these two elements biologically meet, this is referred to as the beginning of the existence of the human. Inheritance comes and says no. Biologically, yes, that might have been, or it was the beginning. Inheritance comes, as Alexis Carl came and clarified, that insan comes into existence, his characteristics, decades if not centuries before the ovum meets the spermatozoon. Meaning, your grandfathers, so on and so forth, your ancestors were generous. It's very likely that your characteristic of generosity tends to stem from them. Inheritance comes and says, no, there are many other elements to take into consideration when it comes to the existence and the character that you hold, other than the meeting of the two biological elements being the ovum and the spermatozoon. That's why, if you were to come and look at the Quran came and proposed this theory years before any scientist, years before any psychologist, years before any geneticists. In other words, for example, the verse I began with, Allah Azza wa Jal says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Rabbi, la tadhar. Who's saying this? Nuh. Rabbi, la tadhar ala al-ardi min al-kafirina dayara. Innaka in tadharhum yudhillu ibadaka wa la yalidu illa fajiran kafara. Allah comes and speaks about genetics and the effect of inheritance on insan years before Carl, years before Mendel, years before anyone. What does the verse say? Allah turns to, or Nuh turns to his Lord. He tells him, Rabbi, la tadar ala al-ard min al-kafirina dayara. Don't leave anyone from the disbelievers on this earth. Why? Innaka in tadarhum yudillu ibadak. If you leave them, they're going to lead your servants astray. What else? وَلَا يَلِدُ. Look at inheritance clearly. وَلَا يَلِدُ إِلَّا فَاجِرًا كَفَارًا. They will not give birth except to a fajr, one who is a practitioner of indecency, and kafara, a disbeliever. Quran came and established it. You come into the narrations, and the narrations are too explicit, specifically the narrations of the Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Rasulullah, you know what he says? He says the evil came from an evil. Clearly, he says it. Evil came from an evil human being. And the good come from the good. If you ask me, you want a hadith in Arabic, look at the hadith. Rasulullah comes and says, تَخَيَّرُوا لِنُطَفِكُمْ. And this is a lesson for anybody looking to get married. تَخَيَّرُوا لِنُطَفِكُمْ فَإِنَّ الْعُرْقَ دَسَّاسٌ. Rasulullah comes and says, be careful where you choose your what? The material which will lead to the existence of your child. Be careful where you choose those drops. Why? إِنَّ الْعِرْقَ دَسَّاسٌ. He says, indeed, irq, which is what? Descendants and inheritance, دَسَّاسٌ. It will spoil it. Just as, Rasulullah doesn't say this, just as vinegar will spoil the honey, be careful where you get those substances from. Why? Because they can spoil the most pure of substances. And there's no example I can give you better than the story of Nuh. Yes? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turns, or Nuh turns to his Lord, he tells him, إِنَّهُ مِنْ أَهْلِي. He says, he is from my what? From my family. Allah tells him wrong. إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ مِنْ أَهْلِكَ. Allahu Akbar. إِنَّهُ عَمَلٌ غَيْرُ صَالِحٍ. He says it's indecent activity, right? In other words, it's not upon biological relationship, it's upon spiritual and moral. Therefore, the Quran was explicit. We want to see what was the role of inheritance in the personality of Abu Abdullah. There are three figures which played primary roles in shaping the character of the son of Fatima. The first human being that played the vital role was indeed none other than Ali ibn Abi Talib. Because why? He lived with him for 37 years. Imam was born on the 3rd of Sha'ban, some say the 4th. Ali ibn Abi Talib killed 41st after Hijrah. Nearly 37, 38 years Imam spent with who? With his father. Therefore, the biggest influence in the life of Imam al-Hussain, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, was none other than Amir al-Mu'mineen. He inherited specific qualities from the three individuals I'm about to narrate. What was the characteristic in which he held, which was Alawi? It must have been the generosity of Imam al-Hussain. The generosity of Hussein was Alawi. You know why? Because he inherited his generosity from the one who was even generous in his ruku'. إنما وليكم الله ورسوله والذين آمنوا الذين يقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة وهم راكعون. He inherited his generosity from the one who was generous even when he was speaking to his Lord. The famous story, I don't need to say, he would give the ring in ruku'. Where do we see the generosity of the Imam? It is said that the Imam had such generosity. It's an Islamic principle. إذا حييتم بتحية فحيوا مثلها أو ردوها بأحسن منها أو ردوها. Quran says, if somebody tells you Salamun alaykum, it's wajib to say alaykum salam. Some say even in salah you have to break your salah and say alaykum salam. One day, a servant would come to Imam and she would give him a bouquet of flowers. You know what he would do? He would tell her, you're free to go. Anas ibn Malik comes to him, he tells him, Ya Imam, why did you just give her the freedom to leave? He quoted the verse. Allah says, if somebody tells you salam, give them equal or better. He said, she gave me a bouquet of flowers, therefore only freeing her would have been better. This generosity, brothers and sisters, must have been extracted from the generosity of his father, Amir al-Mu'mineen. Therefore, his generosity was no doubt a generosity that its roots were soaked in Alawi water. That's the first example. Second example, which played a vital role in the life of the Imam, was what? Was his mercy. If his generosity was Alawi, then his mercy must have been Muhammadi. Okay. When you come and you look at the mercy of Abu Abdullah al-Hussain, it's on a different level. His mercy and forgivingness as well was from Rasulullah. His ability to forgive the enemies on the 10th of Muharram, to which Zainab, salawatullah wa salam alayhi, would see him cry. You'd see him crying. She would tell him, Ya Imam, why do you cry? Fear? No, Zainab. أبكي على أمة سوف تدخل النار بسببي. I cry about a ummah who will enter hellfire because of me. That mercy, which encompassed the heart of Hussein, must have been mercy that emanated from that man who was able to forgive the very ones which would make his life a living hell in Mecca. In Mecca, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he entered Mecca, one of the companions would say, اليوم يوم الملحمة اليوم تسبل Hurama. One of the companions would say, today is the day where we kill. Today is the day where the females become prisoners of war. Rasulullah would tell them, excuse me, this is not the school of Rasulullah. Correction. Not al-yawm yawmul malhama. He changed the lam to ara. Al-yawm yawmul marhama. Malhama is what? Killing. Rasulullah came and changed the lam to ara. That change, that transition from the lam to ara is the summarization of the school of Muhammad ibn Abdullah. He would tell him, Al-yawm yawmul marhama. Al-yawma tusanu al-hurama. Today is the day of forgivingness. Today is when the females are what? Are protected. That forgivingness, where do we find it in the character of Abu Abdullah? Imam al-Hussain, wallah, he has a narration which is fantastic. You know what he says? He says, if somebody cursed me in my left and then apologized in my right, I would forgive him. I've seen people, and inshallah we're not one of them, they hold grudges for 30 plus years. Somebody looks at him wrong, that's it, he's an enemy. Somebody speaks ill, and he might not even meant it, speaks ill about him or his family. For years they don't speak. Let us not let shaitan, let us learn from the forgivingness of Imam al-Hussain to mend any breakings that took place between us and other people, to remove any grudges, any hate. That's not from the school of Imam al-Hussain. It takes minutes. It takes years to build a relationship. It takes minutes to destroy it. Let us not let shaitan come to us in his ways, because he comes. Imam says, if they curse me in my left, I forgive them in my right. Of course, all of Ahlul Bayt were such. You know what Imam Zayn al-Abidin says? Huh? He says, if the swords which were used to kill my father were given to me as a trust, I'll return it. You want to talk about mercy, you want to talk about open-heartedness, you want to talk about being able to keep a word, it was all there within the school of Ali Muhammad. His forgivingness and his mercy was Muhammadi. Then you come to number 3, his purity. You can't put it in any other category other than it being Fatimi. His purity was on a different level. What was the purity of the daughter of Rasulullah? Rasulullah's daughter, Fatima alayhi salam, one day Imam would see her crying. Well, this narration, he would see her crying and he would tell her, why do you cry? She would, listen, she would say, I walked from my father's house to my house. I remembered the transition from barzakh to the grave. I walked from the Prophet's house to my house. I remembered the transition from barzakh to the grave. That purity, which Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam would come to Fatima, he would see her praying for the neighbors. He would tell her, Fatima, my mother, when are you going to start praying for us? It's all the neighbors. She would tell him, Bunay Hasan al-Jar qabla al-Dar, the famous lines. She would tell him, the neighbors before us. This selflessness, this altruism was there within Fatima Zahra. Where do we find it within Imam al-Hussain? Imam al-Hussain, his purity is all encompassed in Karbala. It was all Allah. It was all, as one would say, he was transparent. 12 strikes on his neck, 12 times he would say Allahu Akbar. It was all related to Allah. They would deny them water, they would give water. The selflessness. It must have been Fatimi. In other words, the first element which needed to be looked at was inheritance. Number 2, the role of family. When you come and you look at the family, there are certain things that needed to be looked at. And the contribution of Rasulullah, of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and of Fatima Zahra to the character of Imam. What was the contribution of Rasulullah. We know Rasulullah died when Imam Hussain was how old? 7, 6. He had 6, 7 years with him. Yeah, his influence was astounding. How do we know the influence? The first area where we can take a look at the influence of the Imam by Rasulullah to him was his care for Abu Abdullah al-Hussain. You know, we're told that the Imam was never breastfed by a female. Some ahadith come and say that Imam al-Hussain never was he breastfed by a female. Who would feed him? Who would give him the vitamins and the minerals that you need? Rasulullah would place his thumb in the mouth of Imam al-Hussain and he would feed him with the minerals and vitamins, not of milk, but the minerals and vitamins of nubuwwah. He would soak his heart and he would strengthen and make rich his personality with the minerals of Risala. That's one example. Another example is that he would give a ta'weed. This is a ta'weed which Rasulullah says Ibrahim recited for Ismail. And he would also recite it for Hassan and Hussein, which is what? He would say, Allahumma, he would say, بِكَلِمَاتِ اللَّهِ التَّامَّةِ مِن كُلِّ شَيْطَانٍ هَامَّةٍ وَعَيْنٍ لَامَّةٍ. He would say, Oh Allah, with your words, your complete words, protect this child from every whisper and move of shaitan. وَمِنْ عَيْنٍ لَامَّةٍ, every evil eye. He would recite it and he would say, this is what indeed Ibrahim would recite for Ismail. That's one example. Another example of his care was the love that he showed. Sunni books are replete for the love of Rasulullah toward Hassan and Hussein. Hadith after hadith. You come and you look at, for example, the hadith that comes and tells us that one day Rasulullah would be leaving the house of Aisha and he would pass by the house of Fatima, and he would hear that the Imam was crying. He would come in and look at the love. He would say, Oh Fatima, don't you know that hearing the cries of Hussein hurts me? I tell him, Ya Rasulullah, if the cries of Hussein hurt you, then how much would have the sounds of the grunts of Abu Abdullah when the swords were striking him would have hurt you? The cries of Hussein would hurt Rasulullah. The love which he showed. On another level, not only his care, but the types of ways in which Rasulullah would show the significance of the Imam. You know how much time Rasulullah would try to make clear to the people the significance of the Imam? You have, for example, this here is the Sunni narration. He would be praying. Tirmidhi narrates. Rasulullah would be praying. And he prolongs his sujood. People would come to him and say, Ya Rasulullah, why did you prolong your sujood? They would say, something happened. Did you receive? We thought you were receiving revelation. He said, no revelation. Except that Hussein came on my back and I prolonged my sujood. Why would he do that? Rasulullah could have said, he could have moved him and continued his sujood, could have justified it saying, I'm speaking to Allah, please don't distract me. He did it. And why did he do it? He's trying to show the significance of this man. Wallah, there's narrations which put Rasulullah in a humiliating way. Yeah, of course it wasn't humiliating, because he would do it to show the significance of Imam al-Hussein. One narration says Rasulullah would put his knees on the ground and he would begin to crawl. And Imam Hassan and Hussein would be on his back. And he would say, good, look at the words. He would say, good is the camel which you ride, and good are the ones who are riding it. Why is he doing that? He's trying to show the significance of these two human beings. So on one level, through his actions. On another level, through his words. How? You know the narrations. Hadith after hadith, which comes in what honors Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Husaynun minni wa ana min Hussain. أحب الله من أحب حسينا. الحسن والحسين إمامان إن قاما وإن قعدا. What else? Al-Hussain sibtun min al-asbat. Hussain and Hassan are Imam, whether they rise or stand. Hussain is from me and I am from Hussain. Al-Hussain, Misbah al-Huda wa Safinatul Najat. Constantly. On one level, yes, through his words. On another level, through his on his actions. On another level, through his words. He's trying to honor the Imam. He's trying to show the significance of the Imams. That Rasulullah contributed much to the character of the Imam. That when you speak about family, the first influence was Rasulullah, where he would contribute through care, he would show the significance of the Imam until the end. That is Rasulullah. You then come to how did Amir al-Mu'mineen contribute to the upbringing of Imam al-Hussain? He did very much so, because he spent how many years with him? 37 years he spent with his father Ali ibn Abi Talib. You'll see that's one of the most effective ways in which he would contribute to the upbringing of the Imam, and the clearest ways was through the advice he would give him. There is a sermon which inshallah we can all take a look at, which is not only from Ali to Hussain, it's from every father to every son, in which he would give him social advice, he would give him spiritual advice, and he would even give him advice as to how to deal with people when teaching them religion. Because it's sad to say that one of the biggest repellents away from religion could be the ones who preach it, yes? How many times have we noticed people hating Islam more because of the one who's trying to invite towards Islam? And this is how Muawiyah would spread and defame Islam. We'll come to the night of Muawiyah. Muawiyah would constantly pay preachers, pay fabricators of ahadith, because the tongue is a very effective way to get your message across. It could break a man, of course it could build a man, it could brighten one's heart, it could darken it. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, he would give Imam al-Hussain a number of pieces. It's about 2 pages. I'll give you some social, some spiritual, and some in regards to how he spoke to his son when it comes to teaching him how to spread the religion, because it's etiquette. He would tell him, firstly, when it comes to social, he would tell him, don't expose the defects of the people, lest your illnesses and diseases would be exposed. You know, sometimes in our gatherings, I've heard in certain gatherings, we sit down, and what we do is we backbite. What we do is we slander. Now, if that makes you feel good, that's one thing. But it's a worldly principle. It's a principle of life. Now, what goes around comes around. And Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen hits it on the nail in the advice he gives to his son. He tells him, don't expose the defects of people, lest your defects would be exposed. How many times do we pray to Allah? We say, Ya Sattar al-Uyub. We say, oh, the concealer of defects. We're all. I remember reading one Marja''s biography. You know what he wrote? He says, I am nothing but defects. That was his bio. Insan is soaking with defects. Yet we're very good at picking from others and thinking we are the 15th ma'soom. In other words, there are certain things which he would give to him. That's the first one. Secondly, he would tell him, it's not your blame. You are to blame if something happens because of where you decided to sit. It's a nice one. He would tell him, it's your fault if something happens in a gathering because you chose to sit there. Sometimes a majlis may not be effective, not because of the speaker, but because of where you chose to sit. The one next to you is constantly joking. The one next to you is constantly laughing. The one next to you is constantly playing with his games. You notice it, that it could be one of the ways to impede the effectiveness of a majlis when you sit in the wrong place. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen says, firstly, he would give him social etiquettes. He would give him spiritual. Allahu Akbar. He would tell him, the respect of a mu'min is found in his needlessness from the people. The respect of a mu'min is found in his needlessness from the people. You know what, Ibrahim, one day he was being thrown in the fire. Allah sends Jibreel to help him. He tells him, help, do you need it? He tells him, from you, no. From him, yes. علمه بحالي يغني عن سؤالي. He would say, he knows my status. Therefore, who are you? That needlessness is what created what? Neediness to Allah is what creates needlessness from everyone else. It is when you pray before Allah. It is when you feel you are poor before Allah, you feel you are rich before the people. Isn't it the Imam himself, in Dua Arafah, he turns to Allah and he says the fantastic lines, مَاذَا وَجَدَ مَنْ فَقَدَكَ وَمَا فَقَدَ مَنْ وَجَدَكَ. He would say, what has he found? He who lost you. And what has he lost? He who found you. Allahu Akbar. Therefore, he would tell him, your respect and dignity. You want to be dignified, O Hussain? Find your needlessness from the people. That's the first piece, the second piece of advice, which is what? Spiritual to the Imam. Thirdly, he would give him a nice one, which is how to spread the religion. Telling him, Ya Hussain, you will be a conduit to the message. You will be a propagator of the message. You will be a hujjah of Allah. Yeah, there are certain things you need to know with how to deal with people when it comes to teaching them about religion, because you're not teaching chemistry. You're not teaching geography. You're teaching the book of Allah. He would tell him, don't spare from their sins. How many times have you noticed the discussion up there is what? Death, the types of adhab, and the menu which you'll have in Jahannam. The types of punishment. You leave the human being thinking, is religion all about hate? Does Allah, you leave the child thinking, does Allah begin every verse with Bismillah al-Jabbar al-Mumit? Or Bismillah al-Qahar al-Mutakabbir? Bismillah ar-Rahman Rahim. In the name of Allah most. Why did Allah begin every chapter within the book? Other than one surah which is compensated by, in Surah Al-Naml, إِنَّهُ مِن سُلَيْمَانَ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ, with the Rahman Rahim. Why? Allah is saying that my two qualities which I want to be known by are Rahman Rahim. Don't we remember reciting in Ramadan, يَا مَنْ سَبِقَتْ رَحْمَتُهُ غَضَبَ, oh, the one who his mercy overcompasses and overpowers his anger. In other words, he would tell him, deal with the people in a merciful fashion. Rasulullah was not only Nadir, he was Bashir. Bashir is what? Glad tidings. Nadir. Of course, it's not just bubbly and relax and heaven. No. At the same time, there's no doubt. Quran is replete with verses of hell. Yeah, Quran is also replete with verses of paradise and with the breeze of Jannah. Allah creates a balance. Likewise, as the book is balanced, we need to be balanced. The Lord Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes and says, كذلك جعلناكم أمة وسطا لتكونوا شهداء على الناس ويكون الرسول عليكم شهيدا. Allah says we created you one of the main features of Islam is that it is a balanced religion. There's a big discussion. So many features of balance. Jesus in the Jewish religion is son of adultery. In Christianity, son of God. Islam comes and says, why are you so extreme? He's the prophet of God. Rather, he's the soul of Allah. Neither is Islam capitalistic, nor is it socialistic. It came with a new philosophy. Neither is Islam stay away from all pleasures, nor is Islam indulge completely like heathenism. No. خَيْرُ الْأُمُورِ, as the hadith says, أَوْسَطَهَا. Neither does Islam come and tell you, mix with society all day and forget Allah, and nor does Allah come and tell you, pray 24/7. Sometimes you see people, and he's out of innocence, he's attempting to be religious. You'll see people, wallah, on campus, he's wearing a kanzu. I tell him, what are you doing? It's what? It's an attempt, and you'll notice it. That same human being, I promise you, give him a few weeks, or a few months, or a few years, you find him in the clubs. Because once you go to one extreme, you're bound to what? It's like you fire back to the other side. Because you get sick of it. That extremism is shaitan. You want to pray, you're tired. Shaitan tells you pray or not. You may say, what? Shaitan is telling me to pray? Shaitan comes in the best of ways. Huh? It comes to my mind that one day, it is said that Muawiyah, he would be approached by shaitan, and he would wake him up for salah. He would tell him, Muawiyah, time to pray. He would tell him, what? Who are you? Shaitan. He's like, something's happening. What do you mean? It's time to pray. He would tell him, time to pray. He would tell him, why are you waking me up for salah? He told him, because if you were to wake up, you would have sighed and you would have regretted it. That sigh is equivalent to 100 salahs. I wanted you to wake up and pray. If you were to wake up and pray, you won't sigh. Isn't the hadith come and say, an act of indecency that makes you humble is better than an act of goodness that makes you arrogant? How many times you've done good, you walk around with your chest inflated, thinking you've done something. And then you have others who he does a bad act, yet he feels saddened. He feels depressed. That depression, that sadness is greater in the eyes of Allah than a goodness which makes you arrogant. Yes? Shaitan, one of his ways is tazyeen. What is tazyeen? Tazyeen is that he enshapes the bad to look good and the good to look bad. Give charity. Shaitan tells me to give charity? Yes. So that you feel good once your name is mentioned on the pulpit. That would make you arrogant. Therefore he's going to tell you, go and do it. Shaitan is discouraging me from waking up, from staying asleep for salah? Yes. Because the repercussion of that act is greater than the sin. It's a reward. The repercussion of the sin is a reward. Therefore, you'll notice that, to come back to our discussion about how Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen contributed to him, he would tell him, don't fear, don't allow the people to fear. We come back to the main research. He would tell him, deal with people in a merciful fashion. Bashir and Nadir, merciful and reminds them of the evils. Thirdly, you have Fatima Zahra. How did she contribute to the character of the Imam when it comes to upbringing? You'll notice that Fatima Zahra disciplined the Imam, just as Rasulullah did. Rasulullah, he would teach the Imam Quran, as we mentioned. He would, even one day, Imam would be eating a date. Rasulullah would remove it from his mouth. He would tell him, Inna sadaqata muharramatun alayna ahlul bayt. He would tell him, don't eat the date. He's disciplining him. Of course, this hadith is up to be questioned, because the Imam is ma'soom, doesn't make sins, yet it might have been a lesson for you and I to show us the status of Ahlul Bayt. When it comes to Fatima Zahra, likewise. Yeah, there's a nice one here. You'll notice that Fatima Zahra, she would one day discipline the Imams in which example that the Quran gives us. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. The famous instance where Hassan and Hussain were sick, Rasulullah Or in other words, Fatima to Zahra would fast for 3 days, doing a nadhr, a vow, hoping that the Imam would be cured by Allah through this vow. An excellent way for us to deal with our children, vows, a Quranic etiquette of answering our prayers. He would tell him, or Fatima Zahra, she would fast for 3 days. First day, a miskin comes, a poor, a needy, yatim, an orphan, asir, a prisoner of war. For 3 days, they eat very little. That right there, notice there were 2 things that happened. Imam Hussain faced hunger and he faced thirst. Those 2 things was Fatima preparing him for the 10th of Muharram. Because on the 10th of Muharram, the Imam faced hunger and the Imam faced thirst. That there was Fatima preparing and disciplining the Imam for that day which will come, where likewise he'll have little food, and that day where he'll have little water. That is in regards to the upbringing and the family and the necessary role that the family plays in the life of insan. Number 3, we mentioned number 1 was what? Number 1 was the role of inheritance. Yes? Number 2, family. Number 3, and of utmost, is the notion of what? Environment. When it comes to environment, psychologists and companies such as organizations such as UNESCO who deal with children, they come and they mention to you a number of roles that the environment plays. Roles such as, if the environment is well, why go far? UCLA in the States, they did a study with 47 adults who had shaky behavior. They go back to their childhood and it was shaky. The environment played an unbelievable role in shaping who these people were. When speaking about the environment, there are 2 principles that need to be taken on board. Number 1 is that who you are today, or where you grow today, dictates who you become tomorrow. You can't have a nice tree with beautiful fruits in a bad environment. You can't expect to see an alim grow up in Harlem. Neither can you expect a rapper to grow in Qom. The environment plays a vital role. It plays a role which shapes who you are today. All of us sitting here are products of our past. Yes? That when you come to the environment, number 1, who you are, where you grow today, affects who you become tomorrow. That's the first. And the second one, environment can be the springboard to a successful life, and the environment can be a springboard to the worst of lives. The environment. Al-bi'a. Sadly. And it's a reality. We are products of the environment. How many times have you noticed in Muharram, many tend to turn on the Muharram mode. Ramadan mode. Yeah, also in the summer, it's a mode which is far from Ramadan and far from Muharram. That environment is so necessary that it can be springboard to success or springboard to failure. That's why the best example is who? Look at the difference between Saddam. Saddam, how did he become a Saddam? At 3 years old, he would move to his uncle. Why? Because of course his mother couldn't handle the death of her son. Their father would disappear. He would move to his uncle, to which then he would move back with his mother. His stepfather would beat him. He would then go back and live with his uncle. A life of what? A life of hits, a life of smacks. What do you expect? Shaheed al-Sadr. How did he become Shaheed al-Sadr? Also, he lost his father at 10. You may say, oh, he lost his father, poor guy. No. He lost his father, yes, but the environment afterwards created the dictator that we see. Shaheed al-Sadr also lost his what? Lost his father at the age of 10. Yet he was then moved where? In an environment which was surrounded by the spirit of Amir al-Mu'mineen. in a land which was all books, in a land which was flooding with knowledge, in a land in which created the Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr that you and I know, the man who produced books such as Falsafatuna, Iqtisaduna, yes, books in which today are studied in universities. Shaheed, some say, became mujtahid at 17. You know, 17, he becomes mujtahid, an age which many are far from ijtihad. He becomes mujtahid at 17. Therefore, it was the hand that beat Saddam that made him a dictator. It was the hand that introduced Shaheed to the books that made him a genius. And it was the hands that loved Hussain that made him Sayyid al-Shuhada. Imam al-Hussain, how did he become a Hussain? He became a Hussain because of, look at the environment he was surrounded by. He was surrounded by an environment in which his grandfather was Rasulullah. His mother was Fatima al-Zahra. His uncle was who? Ja'far ibn Abi Talib. Yes, Ja'far al-Tayyar. Hamza, Sayyid al-Shuhada. Khadija, his grandmother. What do you expect? If a Hussain didn't come from such a family, that would be a problem. It was an environment soaked with usma and soaked with tahara. That Hussain was a product of such an environment that when you look at his mercy, it was Muhammadi. Generosity, Alawi, purity. Fatimi, in other words, Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, he was, give me your attention, Imam Hussain was the composition of the virtues of the past. Imam Ali was a drop. Rasulullah was a drop. It falls to the second drop. Have you seen sometimes drops accumulate? Falls to the second drop, Ali. Falls to the third drop, Fatima. To the fourth drop, Hassan. All of them then fell into one drop. Name that drop, Hussain. That drop was Abu Abdullah. He was the accumulation, not only of the Imams and of those five, but of all the prophets. Ziyarat Warif, what do we say? Assalamu alayka ya waritha Adam, waritha Nuh, waritha Musa, waritha Isa, waritha Ajib, waritha Muhammad, waritha Ali. Inherited of what? What did he inherit? Did he inherit money from Amir al-Mu'mineen? Or did he inherit clothes from Rasulullah? He inherited the love and the mercy and the values that accumulated and became the Hussain that we know today. That when you saw him on the 10th, don't say, wow, what an amazing product. It was the process. That's why on this last level, Hussain, Ha, Sin, Ya, Nun. The Ha within Hussain was the Hub and the Hanan of Fatima, the love. The Sin was the Samaha, the forgivingness of Rasulullah. The Ya was the Yaqeen he learned from Ali ibn Abi Talib. And the Noon was the Noor that he got from Rasulullah. Noor, Noorun ala Noor. In other words, in Medina, he was surrounded by Rasulullah. He was surrounded by Fatima. He was surrounded by Hassan, surrounded by his family. Yet the tragedy comes in where? It comes in when you say that man who was surrounded by such individuals in Medina, what was he surrounded by on the 10th of Muharram? On a land where Imam al-Hussain in Medina was used to hearing the voices and shouts of Zainab as children. Switch it. In Karbala, he was used to hearing the shouts of Umar ibn Sa'ad saying, "Ihraqu khiyam al-zalimin," burn the tents of the oppressors. In Medina, he was used to the kisses of Rasulullah on his neck. Yet on the 10th of Muharram, he was used to the strikes of the sword on his neck. On Medina, he was used to the hugs, yes, and the warmth of the hugs of Fatima. Fatima. What warmth did he face on the 10th? He faced the warmth on the sands of Karbala. Yes, Imam alayhi salam on a night like this was surrounded in such an environment. For that reason, he said, Ya Habib ibn Mudahir, wa ya Zuhair ibn al-Qayn, وَيَا Muslim ibn Awsaja, why is it that I shout you and no one comes to aid me? Are you sleeping? Wake up. You know the love of the companions for the Imam? Imam would constantly be poking them, constantly be challenging their love and testing their loyalty, to where one day he was in the tents before the 10th, before the fight, and he would say, if you want to leave, leave, because they want no one's head but mine. No one would leave. He would say, possibly you're embarrassed, let me turn off the candle. He turns off the candle, nobody leaves. He says, why don't you leave? Habib stands up and shows his loyalty, saying, Wallah, if we were killed once, twice, 1,000, resurrected and brought back, we would never leave you, Ya Hussain. Yet there was one companion which is noteworthy of that Christian who would pass by on the sands of Karbala. He would see that there was a man who had nur emanating from his face, the nur in which he inherited from Rasulullah. He would instantly say, who are you? Tell me. He would tell him, I am the grandson of Rasulullah. Could you perform some miracles? Yes, prove it. Some say he did. He would tell him, I want to fight for you and for your message. He would tell him, no worries, here it is, go and take the sword and fight. Imam alayhi salam would give Wahab ibn Abdullah al-Kalbi the permission to go and fight. There he is going to the battlefield until he hears a voice of his mother telling him, Wahab, Wahab, come back. Wahab, don't go and fight. He tells her mother, this is the grandson of Rasulullah. She tells him another time, Wahab, don't fight. He tells her, this is Hussain. She tells him, Wahab, don't fight. It is I, your mother. Go and fight. He would tell her, what do you mean go and fight? You just told me 3 times don't fight. On the 3rd time you tell me fight? Listen to the reply. She told him, when I told you don't fight, I didn't know who you were fighting for. Yet when I told you go and fight, I knew that this was the son of Fatima. I knew that this was the grandson of Rasulullah. I heard Hussain saying, Ala min nasir yansun, ala min mu'in yu'inuna, ala min dhahabin yadhubu an haramillah. I heard the shouts of Hussain, and the shouts of Hussain broke my arm. Wahab goes and fights. They say that Umar ibn Sa'ad commands that the head of Wahab is cut. They cut it. They then throw it to Wahab. Wallah, if you want to see loyalty, here it is. Wahab would take the head, she throws it back. They tell her why. She says 2 things. Firstly, if I had 10 sons, I would give them all for Fatima. And then the second reason is that this head was given sadaqah, and sadaqah is given, never is it taken back. That's one companion. A second one was none other than Muslim ibn Awsaja. You know Muslim? Imam would say, Ala hal min nasir yu'inuna, ala hal min dhabin yadhubu an haramillah. Support. Zuhair, or another Muslim ibn Awsaja, would come to the Imam. He would tell him, here I am ready to fight. He goes and fights. They surround Muslim from all sides and angles, and they kill him until he had moments. Imam al-Hussain comes to him. He tells him, may Allah reward you, you fought. Habib tells him, if there's anything that you wanted, I would have asked you. Yeah, I know I am to follow you. He told him, is there anything you want to tell me? He would point to Hussein. He would say, أوصيك بهذا الغريب. I entrust this gharib to you, none other than Hussein. Take care of him after I die. It is said that when they were aware of his, he would leave the world. His soul would exit his body until he goes back to the camps, Imam. And the wife of Muslim comes running out saying, Wa Muslimah, wa Shaheedah. This hurt the Imam. Here I say, I wish you were there, O Aba Abdullah, when Zainab would run out of the tent. When Zainab would run and trying to remove the fire from her clothes. When Zainab would come out screaming, Wa Aliyah, wa Abata. When Zainab passed by the body of Imam, you know what is said, that she would see an old man sitting on the body of the Imam when she was heading towards Sham. She would tell him, old man, what are you doing? He's dead. He would reply, he would tell her, what do you mean, old man? Why didn't you recognize me? I am your grandfather. She says that she saw him disheveled hair. She saw him with ragged clothing standing above the body of the Imam saying, Sallallahu alayk ya Aba Abdullah, qataluka wa ma arafu man jadduka wa man abuk. They killed you and they didn't know who you were, who your father was and who your grandfather was. اللهم نقسم عليك بأحب الخلق إليك محمد وعلي وفاطمة والحسن والحسين والتسعة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين. Oh Allah, remove the sickness of anybody who has a sickness by the sickness of Zayn al-Abidin. Oh Allah, answer our hajat by Bab al-Hawa'ij. Aba Abdullah. Bab al-Hawa'ij are a number of them. Ali Al-Asghar, al-Banin, Imam al-Kadhim, and Imam al-Hussain. Bab al-Hawa'ij. Oh Allah, bi Bab al-Hawa'ij, Imam al-Hussain. اقضي حوائجنا. يسر أمورنا. عجل لوليك الفرج. Oh Allah, give victory to the Muslims around the world. Oh Allah, we ask you to aid our scholars and give them strength. Oh Allah, we ask you to answer our du'as with Amma Yujib 5 times. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma Yujibul Murtar idha da'a wa yakshifu as-su'. Amma Yujibul Murtar idha da'a wa yakshifu as-su'. Amma ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه. One more time. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه. يا كاشف السوء اكشف السوء عنا يا الله. اللهم شافي كل مريض بحق مريض كربلاء زين العابدين. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. And to answer our du'as and to hasten the appearance of Imam, we say Al-Fatiha wa la salawat.